Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to Reading Carl Schmitt. Um, we're focusing on his book Parlamentarismus. It's a German word. It's really much longer German. I'm not going to read the whole title. It's translated as the Crisis of Parliamentary Democracy. We are in chapter 2 of it, which is looking at parliamentary. And today we're covering the fifth topic of the thing that defined modern parliament, is how he defines parliamentarism in that sense. The fifth characteristic of parliamentarism, because this is how book 2 was, a general discussion. Then he says, well, there's going to be certain kind of things that define it. One was openness. Two was, okay, look at my mind remembering, you know, ah, division of powers or balance of powers. 3 was the concept of law and legislation in parliamentarism. In parliamentarism, the concept of law and legislation. Then number 4 was that parliament is limited to legislation, only legislation, not things like this. And then last but not least, 5, which is today's, and the final one. And it's going to be a short video, I suspect, because we're the general meaning of the belief and discussion. The idea of discussion. What is the nature of discussion? I think we're going to have a short one on this one. So what is the fifth? The general meaning on discussion. This is Schmitt has said this with the bourgeois. The idea of the bourgeois. The bourgeois are the people who like to discuss. He said this in his concept. I think concept of liquor, and also the depolitization article. Both videos are. The depolitization article that I did a video on is in my list in the you can go look at the backlog of the Carl Schmitt, and you'll see the depolitization essay, which he deals with the question of this, and he talks about the bourgeois as always the group that wants discussion. I think even someone like Kojève even argued that in his which I did this book. We did this previously in reading Kojève, right? So you can go watch videos if you weren't interested in this point. So this idea of discussion, this is that the nature of parliamentarianism, the openness of discussion. We're going to deliberate because the parliamentary body is a deliberative body, and therefore deliberation is discussion, and we must have open opinion. And therefore, it is the general opinion that of all powers through their representative. Right, this is the idea. So openness and discussion are two principles on which constitutional thought and parliamentarianism depends in a thoroughly logical and comprehensive system. So this idea of openness and discussion for both the unconstitutional thought of liberalism in that sense, right, and parliamentarianism. Right? For the sense of justice, of an entire historical epoch, they seem to be essential and indispensable, right? It's these two things together. What was to be secured through the balance guaranteed by openness and discussion was nothing less than truth and justice itself. One believed that the naked power and force for liberals, Reichstadt thinking, and evil in itself. Now, for a liberal, in other words, that one believed that naked power and force for liberal, that is Reichstadt thinking, is an evil in itself. For a liberal, is an evil of itself. The way of beasts, as Locke said, and that's second treatise, right? That's which could be overcome through openness and discussion alone, and the victory of right over might achieved. So again, lock, paint a lock, and again, remember you can see my online. I have a whole series on. We read through the whole second treatise of government, and this is relevant to this section here. So you can go check it online here itself. I should have the links. I'm not good enough for this kind of thing. I'm kind of a newbie baby on things, even though I've got these chapters. So go check out my lock thing in that sense. Well, right here, that overcome in this sense. He says right here, there is an utterly typical expression for this way of thinking. Discussion in place of force. Discussion in place of force. In this formulation, it comes from a man who was certainly not brilliant, not even important, but typically adherent, perhaps, of a bourgeois monarchy. So this formulation, it comes from a man who was certainly not brilliant, not even important, but typical adherent, perhaps, of a bourgeois monarchy. He summarized the warp and woof of the whole complex fabric of constitutional and parliamentary thought. All progress, including social progress, is realized through representative institutions, that is, regulated liberty, through public discussion, that is, reason. Now, this is 49. And this is, okay, this is note 49 is to Eugene Franchard, a studies historic, 1853, in his review of Lemonte's History of Revolution of 1848. Lemonte is also an example of the belief in discussion, which he contrasts with the power and force. So not only this is reference to La Fontaine, his historical studies, but also Lemontes, right? Who is this about the revolution, his history of the revolution? Is this contrast between power and force, right? Discussion, which he contrasts with power and force. His both his Sur la publique rationale in 1831 and his Le Passe et le Présent avant the Republique, the future, right? The past, the present of the Republic, 1848, are inspired by this. He even thinks that the newspaper appears in the morning like a rising sun that dispels darkness. Victor Hugo's poetic description of the tribute in his famous Napoleon Le Petit, small little Napoleon, the Tribune in his famous Napoleon Le Petit, is absolutely characteristics of the great importance of the symptom as a symptom. The belief in discussion characterizes this epoch, this bourgeois epoch in that sense. Right? This is kind of like Schmitt's kind of own kind of historicism about the bourgeois moment. Uh, 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 this belief in discussion characterizes this epoch. Thus, Haru, Princess de right to constitution, in other words, the precise letters of constitutional law of 1923, describes the age of parliamentarism as an age of discussion, l'âge de la discussion, and a staunch liberal as Yves Gouroit contrasts parliamentary government resting on discussion. For him, of course, a government de discussion with an atavism of all politics that does not rest on discussion. Goya, politico-parlamentarist, politic avatique, 1924. In this way, parliamentarians become identical with freedom and culture altogether. And there's a very long note by Schmitt. I should really do this on there, but it's going to be a pain. So if you want to go do it yourself on your note, get your copy, go do this. Look at this. This is note 49. Continue. Gumplots. Gumplots completely dissolves all these concepts. And the German thinker, right? He dissolves all these differentiation politics. He says all these concepts. The character, quote unquote, the character and particularity of Asiatic culture is despotism. That of European culture, of parliamentary regime. Ludwig Gunplott's Sociology and Politics of 1892. Now, he says, this is the editor's note, The History of Revolution, 1848, by Adolphe Lamonte, 1848. So, therefore, that's the thing he talks about, but he didn't give the citation in the note. So, therefore, we're left with that thing there. So, okay, so we end this force, this tension between reason and force. But then what happens here? Everything gets lumped together, and all these concepts get lumped together in that sense. In this historical instance, the Asiatic is despotic, the European is parliamentarian. Hmm. Okay, but is that true? Is this a development? Once we understand this in these cultural terms, then we get a kind of a weird block, right? The reality of parliamentarism in party political life and public conventions are today far removed from such belief. So today we don't believe in this kind of way in the 19th century anymore. Great political and economic decisions on which the fate of mankind rests are no longer result today, if they ever did, from balancing opinion in public debate and counter debate. They're based on force in that sense, right? And necessity, right? In other words, these greater things of economic decisions really don't, never did in that sense, from balancing opinions in public debate and counter debate. Such decisions are no longer the outcome of parliamentary debate. The participation of popular representatives in government, parliamentary government, has proven the most effective means of abolishing the division of powers. And with it, the old concept of parliamentarianism. In other words, once you merge in the participation of popular representatives in the government itself, they become the ministers. Therefore, this is a division of power. The executive and the things are no longer divided. They're not balancing each other. They're fused. And this is the way most modern parliaments really are, in that sense, right? And therefore, they abolish division of powers, and with it, the old conception of parliamentarism. As things stand today, it is the course practically impossible not to work with committees, and increasingly small committees. In this way, the parliamentary plenum gradually drifts away from its purpose, that is, from its public. And as a result, it becomes necessary a facade. So, therefore, this idea that, and that's the whole European Parliament in that sense. The European Parliament is a facade. All decisions are done in committees and the commissions, right? That's where the decisions, and there's no transparency, true transparency there. In fact, they're like, oh, you elect them, but they don't know they appoint them, and they self-appoint in any sense, and they disapprove them in that sense. And why they approve? Because the bodies are so broad and so generally constructed, they have no real constituencies in that sense. They're list systems, and list systems are always produced, as Schmitt always argues, as a problematic conception in that sense. It's not real representation. There's only okay. That's the big difference. I mean, this is the big thing difference between single member districts where you have two people fighting. Each party has a representative, and they all fight. Now, of course, this means that other people, oh, you lose. The people who don't belong for that party don't get representation. No, but the problem here is that the other system, that once I create a situation of proportional representation rather than single member winner take all, what ends up happening is instead of the representative fight, keeping loyalty to the people who do this, no, it's who's on the list and where on the list are they, and who controls that, the party leadership. And therefore, loyalty to the party is more important, and loyalty to the party is more controlled than loyalty to your people there. If your party wants this position, then if you don't support that position, you're going to not be put high on the list. You understand? And that's the difference between that and that system. That this idea that the representative, even if he's the other party, is still the representative of that district, and therefore he better, maybe that his angering those people on an issue. Sometimes even though his party might want an issue, he realized that thing may anger voters in his constituency. Okay, that's in other words this is why in single model systems you have the situation where members of parliament kind of break away from their party situations because they're more tied to the local district, particularly if the local district matters to them, and if the issue is going to negatively impact, if the thing the party wants is going to negatively impact your district, you know that it's not going to be a good idea to do it. You might therefore you don't want to hurt you don't want to alienate voters in your district, so you don't vote with your party, right? That's the whole weird thing about this in that sense. So therefore, that there's no, in other words, it's a facade in that sense, right? So therefore, let's continue this. And as public say today, there is, of course, practically impossible to not work in committee, increasingly smaller committees. In this way, parliamentary plenum, the larger parliament, gradually drifts away from its purpose, that is public. And as a result, it necessarily becomes a mere facade. It may be that there is no other practical alternative. I mean, this is the only thing that would work in that system. We're too big in that sense. The two things are complex. One must then at least have enough awareness of the historical situation to see that parliamentarism thus abandons its intellectual foundation, and that the whole system of freedom of speech, assembly and the press, of public meetings, parliamentary immunities and privileges is losing its rationale. So therefore, in other words, this is the logic. You don't have the real rationale for it. That's not how it works. This is not the way it really works in that sense anymore. The Parliament doesn't. Therefore, all these things that we hold as fundamental principles to it lost their rationale. Small and exclusive committees of parties or of party coalitions make their decisions behind closed doors. And what representatives of the big capitalist interest groups agree to in the smallest committees is the most important for the fate of millions of people, perhaps, than any political decision. Therefore, that is private decision, private acts, more than any political decision in that sense, right? The idea of modern parliamentarism, the demand for checks, and the belief in openness and publicity were born in the struggle against the secret politics of absolute princes. The popular sense of freedom and justice was outraged by arcane practices that decided the fate of nations in secret resolutions. But how harmless and idyllic are the objects of cabinet politics in the 17th and 18th century compared to with the fate that is at stake today, and which is subject to all manners of sequence. In other words, talking about 1920s, like this parliamentary situation, legislative parties today, the EU discussions of today, right? This idea this is always done in secret in the cabinet and things like this, and not in public to any degree, any real sense in that sense, right? That is at stake today, which are subject of all manners of secrets. In the face of this reality, the belief in a discussing public must suffer a terrible disillusionment, right? This is the cynicism. This is the very cynicism we have today. We have a world of cynicism. We don't believe in this. We think it's all a facade. This is one of the things that black pill, right? I got the prop of Doom by Girl. I'm going to do something with it. But black pills, big black pill. It's just facade. It's cynicism. It leads to cynicism, and therefore, like that. Therefore, the old belief, the old myth, the old system of parliamentarian, not explaining the reality of what it is, creates cynicism in that sense, right? Terrible delusion. That's a black pill. There are certainly not many people today who want to renounce the old liberal freedoms, particularly freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Well, it's not true really today. Okay, there are people who do want to do that. Okay, but Schmitt's time, even he believed that. In other words, does not want to reduce. But on the European continent, there are not many more who believe that these freedoms still exist, where they could actually endanger the real holders of power. In other words, that these things don't really endanger the truth and discussion of these things. Don't endanger the holders of power. And the smallest number still believe that just law and the right politics can be achieved through newspaper articles, speeches at demonstrations, and parliamentary debates. In other words, he says that and the smallest number still believes that just laws and right politics can be achieved through newspaper articles, speeches at demonstrations, and parliamentary debates. But that this is the very belief in Parliament, right? This is that these things. No, very few people believe these things, but this is the belief, the very belief of what justifies Parliament. If in the actual circumstances of parliamentary business, openness and discussion have become an empty and trivial formality, then Parliament, as it developed in the 19th century, has also lost its previous foundation and its meaning in this sense. In other words, corporatist structures of private things, interest entity, interest. In other words, the very Schmitt's argument is that if we want to hold the belief in parliamentary as the ideal of the 19th century, the reality of 20th century politics destroys that. Okay. It is, but this is the cynicism of this is again. This is Robert Michel's political parties. Robert Michel's political parties destroys that. This is the elite theory. Elite theory shows this of Moscow's the so-called oligarchy, the idea of the iron law of oligarchy by Moscow, that any kind of large, complex structure of things, the bigger and larger it is, the more increasingly oligarchic it becomes, right? The iron law of oligarchy. The whole thing of elite theory, this leads just to kind of a believe that this thing's a facade. It's always going to be the elite's rule. Yes and no. Even the elite people didn't believe that it's only going to be reductionistic in that sense. This is why we have to understand that it's not a black pill. It is this understand reality and alter it from within. And that therefore just understand that the problem here is that accept the legislative situation the way legislation really is and understand it, and maybe that it's not discussion. Don't let the truism of it that it is force. So you might have to use force, use coercion as this the return of coercion, the return of force might be necessary in a sense. And this is why it's weird. This is why you go, oh my God, in one sense they are appalled by this because this sounds illiberal. But the problem here is the system itself is illiberal. And liberalism is a contradicted system in this situation. That liberalism, by its very nature, the liberal structure, the liberal parliamentary model, is illiberal in that sense, the way it operates, the system, the political system, the legislative, it breaks down. And Schmitt talks about the way it breaks down, particularly the bad. He did that very well in his legality and legislation about how the Weimar Constitution creates these extraordinary executive, these that are that get legislators, sorry, that were through different means, and that ultimately destroys the traditional legislature, right? So we stop here. We finish this. We're done with chapter 2. We will turn to chapter 3, the dictatorship, and this is going to be. I'm going to just do this. This might probably be an hour and a half. An hour video. I suspect hour 10-minute video, 50-minute. I hope not, but okay, we can do that. If you have any comments or questions on this discussions of parliamentarism that we did about the last part, please put them there, and I will respond to them when I see them, and I'll comment to you like this. Any questions, concerns like this. If you liked it, hit the like button, share it on social media, share it with your friends, get it out there. Another thing you can do is if you're not subscribed, subscribe. You get subscription gets you updated. You get the notifications and things like this. Encourage others to subscribe. I'd like to grow the channel some more. You know someone who's interested in these things, introduce them to the channel. Please, it's going to be important to kind of grow in that sense. I've been doing these things now like this, and I said, why aren't you lucky? These other guys are like huge. Okay, I've done it so late. I should have done this years and years ago. But my mistake. I'm not as popular as some people. I'm just gonna be like doing this. And I'm not really good voice. My voice is squeaky or loud or like this, and I think my voice is getting hoarse. I'm also not the kind of fun person. People say that. So let's see what happens. So subscribe, grow it more. If you want to follow you can follow me on social media below. My links are listed below, my social media links. I'm so active. I'm more active on Facebook. I use my Facebook. It's kind of like my blog for my friends. You can follow me on those things. You can become, I don't like just friending everyone, but you can usually follow me in that sense. You can follow me on, I post public things on these links below. And like this. And then what else? My academic links are below too. The academic and professional links are below social media, academic social media. And then, last but not least, if you want to help do what I do here, you want to contribute, you want to be a patron or supporter, financial actual supporter in that sense, you can do so through Patreon or Subscribestar. I know I don't do much there. So you're giving this stuff anyway for free. But given how things are getting expensive now because of inflation, and I was hoping for a pay raise, but we didn't get it. It doesn't look like we got it. Um, eh, I'm hoping that that happens in that sense. So therefore, this let's cross like this. But I need. It'd be nice to get something to pay, do this to help cover costs and little things. Because things are getting more expensive. My Amazon Prime. I don't even get much Amazon Prime stuff here. I just get it from my Kindle and my music thing, my U.S. Amazon Prime. My sister gets to use it all the time. I just got hit with $140 bill. It's like, oh God, kill me now. I can't buy books anymore. I'm having a hard time. I should buy books, but I'm not buying as many. I really wanted to buy. Okay, that's neither here nor there. Um, so you can do to subscribe to our Patreon, or you can buy one of my books. The links are linked below. This always, we will turn next time to chapter 3 on dictatorship and Marxist thought. Okay, again, this is a year after, this is like 2 years after his book Dictatorship. So the parliamentarism thing like this, and that's weird. Why does he talk about dictatorship in that sense? Okay, this is an interesting thing that Marxists thought about how it happens here and how this threatens parliamentarism in that sense. Then again, Schmitt is always Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're doing in the time of doing this, we're doing Rousseau as well. So check out the Rousseau on Monday and Wednesdays, and Fridays are always something, either a live stream or something special. Okie dokie. Well, take care. Bye bye. Hope you have a good one. So, have a good day. Take care.